Good morning, everybody. This is the Oregon Liquor and Cannabis Commission meeting of August 18th, 2022. I might say before we take the roll that this is casual August, which most commissioners forgot, but that's okay. But please take the roll.
Commissioner Curran?
Here.
Commissioner Doherty?
Here.
Commissioner Floyd?
Here.
Commissioner Japon Porter?
Here.
Commissioner Relitas?
Leave the roll open for Commissioner, please.
Commissioner Revolve?
Here.
Chair Rosenbaum?
Here. And the approval of the July 21st, 2022 Commission minute. And let me just briefly say, Laura, thank you. No, well, thank you. Thank you for the minutes because who wrote them?
He did.
Oh, they're wonderful. Thank you. They just hit the right spot. Appreciate it. You're going to replace Laura very quickly.
Not the intention.
Here.
Yes.
I move to approve the July 21st, 2022 minutes as written.
Please take the roll.
Commissioner Curran?
Yes.
Commissioner Doherty?
Yes.
Commissioner Floyd?
Yes.
Commissioner Japon Porter?
Yes.
Commissioner Relitas?
Yes.
Commissioner Revolve?
Yes.
Chair Rosenbaum?
Yes. Rethink the Drink, the OHA campaign. We have Tim. Please come up. Dr. Tom Jean. Appreciate both of you being here.
Thank you. Good morning, commissioners.
Good morning.
Director Marks. Thanks for the opportunity to be here and present Rethink the Drink to you. My name is Dr. Tom Jean. I'm Deputy State Health Officer and Deputy State Epidemiologist at the Public Health Division of Oregon Health Authority.
Morning, Commissioner. Director March. Tim Noe. I'm the Center Administrator for the Center for Prevention and Health Promotion.
So we've got some slides for you, and I believe we have about 20 minutes allotted or more.
You do take your time, do it right. We're here.
Okay. Thank you. All right, so we're here today to talk to you about our new statewide mass media campaign called Rethink the Drink. First, we're going to talk about why OHA decided to build this brand, why excessive alcohol use is a public health problem. Then we'll introduce the brand and show you some of the campaign video ads, radio spots, and digital media, or at least tell you where you can see those. And then we'll have some time for questions and hopefully some discussion on how OHA and OLCC can work together in the future. Next slide, please. So why did OHA create Rethink the Drink? Well, we know that excessive alcohol use is a public health problem. It cuts across several areas of health and safety. It affects worker productivity, the safety of our transportation system, crime, domestic violence, addiction, STDs, chronic diseases, and many other health harms. It's the third leading cause of preventable death in Oregon. It's responsible for over 2,000 deaths a year. Altogether, excessive alcohol use costs Oregon $4.8 billion a year in negative impact. That includes healthcare expenses, motor vehicle crashes, criminal justice costs, and lost productivity. And that breaks down to about $1,100 for every Oregonian. So Rethink the Drink introduces a new narrative that gives permission and language for people to start talking about excessive alcohol use and alcohol-related problems. It's our role in public health to inform and educate the public about health harms of alcohol, which extend beyond what most people think about, alcohol use disorder, DUIs, etc. Next slide. So Rethink the Drink is part of the State Health Improvement Plan, which is known as Healthier Together Oregon. It also aligns with the Alcohol and Drug Policy Commission's strategic plan. So some of the priority strategies specific to alcohol and substance use that are in the Healthier Together Oregon State Health Improvement Plan include decreasing binge drinking and decreasing heavy drinking among adults, as well as establishing a statewide public education campaign to increase awareness. So we're just calling out the alignment here with our state goals on this in this area. Next slide. As I said, excessive alcohol use is a major public health problem. You can see in this list the many different types of health harms that are well established to be linked to alcohol. Excessive drinking contributes to 3 types of liver disease. It raises the risk of developing several cancers, including breast cancer, prostate cancer, colorectal cancer, liver cancer, and cancers of the head and neck. Excessive alcohol use also increases risk for high blood pressure, heart disease, and stroke. It can trigger mood and behavioral changes or make them worse, including depression, anxiety, memory loss, and alcohol dependency. And of course, it's also related to crime, domestic violence, motor vehicle collisions, injury, and death from any cause. The negative harms from excessive alcohol use disproportionately impact those with lower education and people of color, despite consumption rates that are generally lower than white Oregonians. These alcohol-related harms affect communities experiencing other health and economic disparities the most. Next slide. So here's our graphics showing what exactly is excessive drinking. How do we define it? Now, it also includes drinking by pregnant women and underage drinking. But in this campaign, we're focusing on these 2 types of excessive drinking. So binge drinking is 5 or more drinks in one occasion by men, or 4 or more drinks for women. And heavy drinking is 15 or more drinks per week by men, or 8 or more drinks per week by women. So that's more than 2 drinks a day on average for men, and more than 1 drink a day per day on average for women. Binge drinking is the most common, costly, and deadly pattern of excessive alcohol use. And I also wanted to add that the CDC numbers here are different for men and women because their bodies process alcohol differently. It's also important to point out that the CDC numbers refer to cisgender males and females. When it comes to gender non-conforming individuals, we need more research to assess the impact of excessive drinking. We do have tools on our Rethink the Drink website for any person of any gender to assess their alcohol use. Finally, it's also true that for some people, any drinking alcohol is too much, any amount of alcohol. And no matter who you are, drinking less is better for your health than drinking more. But excessive alcohol use is a common and socially acceptable behavior. More than 1 in 5 adults report excessive drinking in the past month. And while excessive alcohol use is a primary risk factor for alcohol use disorder, most people who drink excessively would not be considered to have an alcohol use disorder. Excessive drinking, even without alcohol use disorder, contributes substantially to the health harms, safety risks, and overall economic burden of alcohol in Oregon. So this campaign really aims to reduce excessive alcohol use overall. It does not specifically target those who have alcohol use disorder. That really needs more tailored and specific messaging and resources. But we do think the ripple effect from this campaign could reduce alcohol use disorder as well. So here's some data we're going to show you. This is just to highlight how excessive alcohol use has really been a growing problem in Oregon. And this graph here shows about the past 10 years of data that we have, showing alcohol-related deaths at the top, which is the most inclusive category, alcohol-induced deaths, that blue line, and then liver disease specifically, the gray line below that. We saw significant increases in these indicators between 2019 and 2020. So we're seeing some effect of the pandemic there, but you can see that this has been a trend going back at least 10 years. And I wanted to also point out, in some good news, we have seen some huge successes, specifically in reducing underage binge drinking in Oregon. So 11th graders in Oregon in 2001 reported 25% reported binge drinking. In 2019, that declined to just 13%, so about half. However, binge drinking among adults increased from 14.7% in 2001 to 19% in 2019.
Doctor, are you going to go into the reasons on this thing of why there was a reduction in binge drinking and
adolescents?
We'll briefly discuss it. You know, I don't think all the reasons are fully known. I think, you know, times have changed a lot for kids in school. The pandemic certainly changed and upended lives. You know, perhaps some of you have been involved with efforts to reduce underage drinking. There's a lot going on there. But for those for whom drinking is legal, adults, we have certainly seen a significant increase in at least certain groups. And some of these increases are driven by more women drinking. So it's a very complex issue. I don't know if we have time to get into all the root causes, but.
Well, it's so funny because we were inside talking about this 10 minutes ago.
Mhm.
And I made the comment, if you're a teenager, if you're in the 20s, and you like drinking, and you enjoy drinking, there's nothing anybody's going to say or do to change your mind, because if it's still fun, and they're not done with it yet, you could be Jesus Christ and come back on earth, and you're not going to have any, you know, success with somebody who still enjoys it. So that's why I was particularly tuned into when you made the statement you had success in reducing youth binge drinking. Success by numbers, but I don't know how you get in here and tell a youth who's still enjoying drinking that you gotta stop or you can't drink anymore. I know I'm making sense.
Well, I think there's a substantial body of research that shows that parents that have clear communication, expectations, and consequences for youth drinking really decreases their use and delays the onset of their use. And so parental influence is really an important factor in reducing youth use. And then also really just having skills to be able to reduce peer pressure and having different skills among the youth and teaching those skills to youth and how to address peer pressure is a really important factor for preventing use and delaying the onset of youth. So it's really about relationship.
Is that part of the campaign, is to direct that to parents and how to address this with the family?
This particular campaign is mostly focused on adult drinking, as we said. So it's really, I mean, that's so important too, and we do have efforts in that realm. But this campaign is really focused on the legal drinking by adults age 21.
And I noticed that you're calling this alcohol use disorder. And maybe I'm just an old guy. That I'm used to talking about it as a disease and the disease concept, and that would, to me, indicate a different approach sometimes than maybe just a disorder.
So that's the medical term, the
Okay.
current medical term for alcoholism or alcohol abuse.
Right. So that's still current language. I'm not out of touch here. A little bit out of, that's okay. I can take it.
Yeah, I think, you know, again, we're kind of trying to use the official terminology, but in colloquial, people are not calling it alcohol. But, you know, part of it is recognizing that it is not just a willpower issue. It is more of a disease.
Yeah. So it is still recognized as a disease. Yeah.
I believe currently, yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'll continue on. Thanks for the question. So again, we've seen this increase, and it's perhaps a little surprising how much it has gone up there, especially recently. We do think that chronic diseases are playing a key role here, and so in that orange line are included a whole bunch of conditions that are in part attributable to alcohol. So again, some of those cancers, not every colon cancer is caused by alcohol, of course, but some proportion of them are. And the CDC has a really robust methodology to try to estimate what proportion of those are. So with people getting older, people living longer, those are all good things. People are also dying less of tobacco and some other what we call competing causes of death. So that may be part of why we're seeing an increase in alcohol-related deaths, even without a massive increase in drinking. So hopefully that was helpful and didn't wasn't too confusing, but I just wanted to show the trends in our data here. So let's go to the next slide. So we're going to shift gears a little bit here and talk more about the campaign. So here are some of the highlights of the efforts that went into this campaign. And you can see this didn't happen overnight. Really back in late 2015, the Public Health Division saw the need for statewide infrastructure for mass communications around excessive alcohol use. We did some foundational research. We did a formative alcohol assessment. And the point of that was to really better understand the attitudes of Oregonians about alcohol to inform our communication strategy. Then we did some focus groups to test and engage reactions to different ad campaign approaches. We did some actual ad campaign testing, and then the campaign started in June of this year. We did in 2020 recruit partners to participate in a 6-month engagement opportunity called the Real Task Force, and that really helped develop the Rethink the Drink brand, and there were OLCC staff participating in that. And then from 2021, last year until now, we've been holding regular partner opportunities for partners across the state, develop technical assistance opportunities, review the focus group results, and social media training and more. Next slide. So ultimately, the Rethink the Drink brand, along with partner collaboration, will show how reducing excessive alcohol use through a combination of effort, both individual and community, will support Oregon communities' desire to live in healthy, flourishing communities. And we're trying to build a long-term communications infrastructure to support statewide and local conversations. And this is just the first campaign under this brand. So we're looking forward to working with communities to lift up the stories of people across Oregon. And again, just want to recognize that there were many partners across the state coming together to make this all happen, including the voice and the creative element. Many of these partners had never worked together, although they're all experts in the alcohol prevention world. This included local public health departments, nonprofits such as Lions for Life and Oregon Recovers, ODOT, OLCC, the Oregon Sexual Assault Task Force, tribal serving organization, the Alcohol and Drug Policy Commission, and more. And we're trying to include more partners and build new relationships every week. Next slide. Okay, so here's the nuts and bolts of the Rethink the Drink campaign. As I mentioned, the target audience is all people in Oregon, age 21 and over. We have TV, radio, print, and digital advertisements in both English and Spanish. We have Facebook and Instagram pages and ads, and we have a full website in both English and Spanish, rethinkthedrink.com. And then we're providing technical assistance for partners who are involved. Next slide. Here's a couple of the print and digital ads that you can see just as an example, showing the health harms. And if we have time and the ability, you could certainly see if that link would work. That's just one of our 30-second ads called How
Can you play one of them?
We'll see if we can click and it'll work.
I don't think I've ever answered that question, honestly.
Hey, 6 to 12?
15,
Before COVID or during?
You can have one.
and I usually do.
I don't know. How many should I have?
Yeah, so that is one of the video spots. I believe there's 3 or 4 others as well. They're all pretty well produced in my opinion, and we're pretty happy with them. Let's go to the next slide, which shows some of the infographics. And what I like about this is it just shows very clearly what is a standard drink. You know, all drinks are not the same. You know, for example, one of our Oregon IPAs, it's 7% alcohol, and you get a pint. That actually counts as almost 2 standard drinks. So again, another attempt to really educate people and help them understand just how much alcohol they're drinking. Next slide. So some of the preliminary metrics from the ad campaign from July 8th, which is the date of our press conference on this, to July 21st, We've documented 82 news stories about Rethink the Drink, and that translated to over 9 million impressions, impressions being just the number of times that an ad was viewed. Again, these are interim metrics. The campaign is not over until September. We also have had over 4.5 million paid media impressions. So those are the actual ad views, and over 17,000 website visits. And then we will be conducting a full evaluation of the campaign next year. We're also tracking campaign metrics to optimize the campaign performance during the summer. Just try to see which ads perform best and what communication channels are successful in delivering the content. And we'll use those data to shape our future campaign.
Dr. Grant, ask you a question here. I've seen a lot of the emphasis on the damage this can do, and maybe I've missed some of this, but part of the campaign is to show the benefits of being sober or not drinking or not using drugs.
The focus, I don't think we've explicitly focused on that for this campaign. We're kind of talking about in one sense, the positive framing is the less you drink, the better, right, no matter what your level is. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, just a few more slides here. Next slide, please. So we recognize, finally, I want to acknowledge, we recognize this is a complex issue. We recognize the alcohol industry provides thousands of jobs for Oregonians. We make some of the world's finest beers, wines, and spirits. At the same time, we know that excessive drinking carries heavy costs for all of us, whether we drink or not. It affects everyone from children and families to businesses and taxpayers. So this effort encourages people to consider whether we could be handling alcohol use in different ways than we are now. And I want to be very clear that we're not telling people to stop drinking. We do support our local industry, but we need to talk about how excessive alcohol use is affecting us as a community and if we could be handling it in a healthier way. And I'll pass it over to Tim for the last portion here.
But Dr. Jean?
Yes, go ahead.
No.
You're not going to get away from this whole thing, which is good.
Well, that resonates with me. However, I also think that it begs the discussion of the more basic topic, and that's mental health. Because you're aware that drinking is really just a symptom of that at times, right? That drinking is a method used for folks to address mental health issues. So I would think that would be a point that would be focused on more so than how versus using alcohol, in incorrect manner.
Yeah, I think it's complicated. I certainly agree that mental health is a major part. I think there are people, who do social drinking for whom it plays some mental health role. And so I think we do acknowledge that. We also do provide on the website resources, supports for people who may, want to find out, may need support, may want to talk to a provider, healthcare provider. We also have a link to the crisis line for substance use and alcohol use. So we're talking about that, but I think if we were to focus on mental health, I think that almost turns some people off right away. I think when you're talking to many in the general public, they wouldn't think that it would be talking to them. But I think we're trying to just talk about, look, for those who are drinking, we want you to understand the risks. We want you to think about your drinking and how it plays a role in your life. There's certainly benefits, but think about how the balance of benefits and harms to you play out. And I know that when this campaign was developed with our contractor folks, and we had those focus groups, I think some of the messaging was shaped by that. And I wasn't part of all of that, but that may have been part of the issue. But we're not trying to ignore mental health. We're not trying to sweep it under the rug. And we did mention that some of those mental health issues are a big part of the harms of alcohol, but it is kind of circular.
Yes, it's really important to consider that Rethink the Drink itself is a brand from which we will want to launch several different campaigns. I think each of those campaigns could be tailored to a specific issue, like perhaps mental health or even racism, oppression, discrimination, as a and alcohol becoming a tool for having to deal with those internal struggles and external struggles, and several different topics that we could potentially explore through campaigns that would be really important. It's just seeing the capacity and resources down the line to do those.
Yeah.
This was the initial launch
Yeah.
and the initial introductory campaign, but think of it as a brand in which we can launch a number of different campaigns based on capacity and resources.
Yeah, another thing that triggered that question is that I really love that first campaign ad that Adam played. But the young woman who questioned, well, no, a couple of things, but they've never been asked that question. But I think that that question, if it's not asked, is why are you binging or binge drinking or excessively drinking? I think that's a big part of the jump off point. Instead of just focusing on, I'm not saying just focusing, but instead of primarily focused on the fact that you do drink, why? What's causing that?
It's interesting that when we look at prescription drugs and there's a particular dosage, but when it comes to alcohol or some other drugs, sometimes we don't think about dosage as very important and how much you're actually ingesting. And this kind of starts that conversation of, do I need to really think about dosing my alcohol use just like I would my prescription drug? Because it has harms when you go above a particular dose, just like it would with a drug, right? So we were asked to also have a discussion about how can the OLCC help OHA with the campaign and with these efforts. I think the first thing is just continued interagency coordination.
Yeah.
We really appreciated having public health representatives on your rural advisory committee and being a voice at the table in regard to those rural development activities, and I really appreciated that. So the more we can continue to participate in rural advisory committees, that would be great. We've also really appreciated the development of the public health questionnaires and impact statements that we've been asked to develop around some of the rural development. That's really in line with what we would, how we would want to contribute to the rural. I think we could potentially strengthen that aspect in terms of a lot of the times we look at those questionnaires, we're just saying, well, there's no research to support that. And so we don't know what to say, and knowing that we could potentially have a voice at the table to provide expert opinion on a particular rule would be really helpful instead of just looking purely at evidence. Might be a way to strengthen that back and forth relationship in regard to looking at the public health impact of a particular rule. So we would appreciate exploring how we could strengthen those impact questionnaires and statements. Data sharing, of course, is another area where I think we could really strengthen our relationship and share data back and forth with each other as needed in terms of any data you may need to inform an opinion or inform a rule development or inform a decision-making process. We're certainly willing to share those data as requested. Development of legislative concepts involving public health and having coordination around those is particularly important. We really appreciated the agency staff participation in the task force to develop the Rethink the Drink campaign and providing feedback and input along the way in that development, and we'd love to continue that. And so we've worked together previously on cannabis, on the vaping crisis, and I think did a really good job of collaborating on those particular health issues, and we would love to continue those types of interactions, those types of collaborations in the future. I think public health has a lot to contribute to those discussions, and we would certainly be willing to continue to contribute to those. I think another thing is funding. And I was talking about future campaigns and having the capacity and resources to be able to implement campaigns that are addressing particular aspects of alcohol use. we would love to talk about how we can potentially partner around funding a campaign and thinking about that, or supporting any other future efforts around alcohol use. And I think there are a number of different legislative concepts around safety issues that we can think about and health impact together as, collaboratively. And part of what we do at the Oregon Health Authority as we work with other state agencies like Department of Education and Transportation, Housing, and others is develop formal relationships through memorandum of agreement and understanding so that we have clear expectations of what we want to do together. We might want to consider looking at actually doing that together as to strengthen our formal relationship and working together in a formal agreement. We would be open to doing that. But the main thing is just thank you for having invited us to participate on the RACs and asking for our opinions on the public health questionnaires. And thank you for inviting us today to talk about our campaign and anything you can do to promote the campaign would also be helpful. And just continuing to have conversations and building understanding of the public health impact is really important.
Is there an agency funding number involved in this thing? Just asking for agency funding, but no dollar figure in mind?
Oh, I don't know what.
I'm going your hair asking, don't tell her.
I will just say in our current budget request, we have nearly $1 million of communication money we're asking for, both on the alcohol side and the cannabis.
But that doesn't all go to it.
No, we don't have it yet, right?
So,
we had never had
listen, you got our attention, you're in front of us, what are you asking for? It doesn't mean you're gonna get it, but what are you asking for?
Well, we'd rather work together and come up with an idea that we want to fund together and develop and co-create something together and then determine what it would cost to do that rather than just coming with an arbitrary number. I think that would probably more suit our way of doing things.
Can you share with us what the ads are running right now for what you're doing?
It's not as much as you think it would be.
I'm not thinking, I'm asking.
I'll have to check on that. I don't get into those details, but I can check and get back with you on what's costing right now. I think we're spending around less than $1 million.
Yeah, I've seen the figure, but I didn't bring it with me. I think it's something like 800,000.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's something under $1 million. Yeah, that we're spending right now.
For this campaign, which started June 27th and goes through September 4th, so it's about a little over 2 months.
And that's all media, about 800,000. That's print ads as well as.
That's
TV.
all inclusive, actually.
It's all mostly clicks. And you're using outside agencies to put this campaign together?
Yeah, the Codes Cokes is the agency we use.
And do they have, I don't know if you have the answer or not, but do they have a way of measuring the effectiveness of the campaign so the money you're putting out there, $800,000, let's see. I think this is a difficult area. That's why I'm asking. I don't.
There's an evaluation that will be done to do a survey of the amount of the frequency, the dosage of what individuals see, the number of times they see a click or an advertisement, and then the impact in terms of their perception and their knowledge and their willingness to reduce their drinking. And so we'll be doing an evaluation to see has it had any impact on those individuals who have actually received the messaging.
Once the data is in, when you notify Steve, and then let's put it on the calendar and come back and talk to us.
Yeah, right.
Is there any other questions?
Maybe, especially, have you looked at anything? I mean, one of the things, what we're tasked with is obviously the distribution sale of alcohol too, and we've all had to read, well, not had to, but we've read a book, for liquor control. We kind of understand the dynamic system, why it works the way it does. Have you guys as an agency ever kind of looked into that in terms of like control states versus non-control states and the benefits of being a control state versus non-control state?
Yeah, there's quite a substantial body of research into that, and controlled states obviously have less access and less use than non-controlled states.
Yeah, well, and I asked if kind of knowing some of those things. I think one of the things that I always keep in mind up here is that like, we kind of, some people don't always understand why the state regulates and distributes sales. And I think one of the things that, you know, like we were adopting policies to try to make business more flexible, a big part of that discussion was, you know, public health. How are we going to make sure that we're being responsible in the roles that we're making? And I think that's just one aspect that I think if the agencies work together might be good, just to kind of, not a main factor of it, but just to kind of reiterate to folks the value we have in Oregon of being a control state. The fact that, you know, almost $2 billion a biennium is generated in revenue, and that goes back to the state. That is other money that would otherwise go into private interest. And, you know, this agency is one of the leading funders of, you know, addiction treatment services in counties and cities and health programs. And so I think that's one thing a lot of people don't realize, and I think would be good because we are really partners, and when we have slightly different missions, I think, but really we don't. We're on the same team, and we're doing the same thing because you know, we agree towards liquor control, as you know, and alcohol is a part of our society, and it's going to be, and when you try to take it away, there's repercussions. So this is the balance we've struck in Oregon. I think it's a good one. So anyway, that's my 2 cents on it.
Yeah, it's extremely in line with the public health approach, and we really appreciate you acknowledging that, being on the same page with us on that, and we love to strengthen that messaging around that.
Matt, when they come back with the data, that's a great question, and we need to focus in on that after the data comes back. That's great. Any other questions? I have one. Commissioner Gayapon Porter talked about mental health. So addiction is a disease of feelings and emotion. The alcohol is the last thing that goes into somebody's mouth. It's the feelings and emotions that drive a person to get rid of their feelings and emotions. I'm quite serious about that. So it is a mental health issue. And when you have feelings and emotions, you can't tell a human being that their feelings and emotions are wrong. Hey, I'm really aggravated about something. Okay, I'll drink it away. So I like the ads. I think, you know, you can't stop somebody from drinking, but you can make them think at least, you know. And scaring a person into what the ramifications are important. My whole point is this. A hell of a lot of people who have alcohol problems have a gene in them that says, I'm going to drink. You know, they're born with the gene to drink. I believe that very strongly. And it's the family of generation to generation. And I know a lot about that because I know a lot about my family. So what I'm saying is there a way, think about it anyway, but is there a way besides using these ads to talk about the fact that genes play a part, which they do, in alcoholism and addiction, and gear and air the two towards the fact that if you know that your family have been drinking their whole entire lives and you're drinking, then you got a gene in you that says you're going to drink. And, you know, I'm just throwing it against the wall, but it really happens to be true.
Yeah, it's really important. And, you know, actually the research supports that it's several factors, including biological factors, environmental factors, mental health factors that contribute to a person developing a substance use disorder or alcohol use disorder. And that's something different than excessive alcohol use, which is the focus of this particular campaign. I think if we wanted to focus on alcohol use disorder, it would be a completely different campaign. It would probably include the mental health component. And in addition to a number of the risk factors for precipitating alcohol use disorder. But yes, there is certainly a biological component in the data.
I totally disagree with you on that, but that's neither here nor there. When you got to think about drinking, well, that person who's drinking, they know their father or mother were alcoholics. And if you got 13, 15, 18, 25% of people in that category, and you can hit them on television or radio and make them think about it, that's the same thing what you're doing on these ads.
And we know about 60-something% of Oregonians drink alcohol, and of those 60-something%, about 10 or 12% have alcohol use disorder. And what we're really focused on with this campaign is those, that 80 to 90% of those 65% that drink alcohol but don't have an alcohol use disorder. We're trying to say, even though you don't have an alcohol use disorder, you may drink too much, okay, for health reasons. So rethinking that dosing aspect we talked about earlier, how much should we consider to be a healthy amount to drink without suffering consequences for that? And the consequences are numerous across the board in a number of different domains.
I perfectly understand that, and I don't want to go any further. The effectiveness is scaring them about their health, and rightfully so. That's important.
Well, let me say that in this presentation, I was trying to highlight some of the public health impacts and the individual health impacts. We do talk about that on the website. We do allude to it in the ads. The ads are really more focused, like the one you saw, on just people saying, I never really thought about how much I was drinking, or I don't know. Looking at the actual amount of drinking and having people think about that and reflect on it. But it's not really a scare campaign at all. We're trying, but the tone of the ads are not meant to scare people. It's really trying to treat people as, smart people who can make the best choices about themselves, assuming they have all the information, and we're just trying to get that information. I also want to say that, mental health is a huge issue. It's certainly intimately tied to alcohol use and all substance use. But it's also a social phenomenon. And alcohol is a socially legal and acceptable in most circles substance that many people use. So we are trying to, I think, tackle that social idea that, having a bunch of drinks with your buddies or friends is a perfectly normal and healthy thing to do. We're just trying to shed some light on that, I think. So the social issue for people who don't have alcohol use disorder, we think that there are a lot of people who are still drinking excessively. I may not think about it.
It makes sense. I'm sure we're all, backing you 100% on this thing. We just throw stuff against the wall and see what this is.
I think a targeted campaign in the future to talk about alcohol use disorder and mental health and all the other risk factors for alcohol use disorder would be extremely important to talk about. An extremely important campaign to get out there. We just want to make sure that it's not shaming or stigmatizing in any way, which is really hard to do.
Well, we better be talking about, because that's the whole issues with homeless is 35-40% of people who are homeless have got those issues. That, if they're not talking about that now, we're all in trouble. Hey, did you have something else?
I just don't, I love that. I love your campaign, as I said before. I think on the same thing with CARE, that I don't see how campaigns could be or should be mutually exclusive, having social and mental. I think it's a broad umbrella, and the campaign, regardless of what the intention is, should and could reach all of the population.
Yeah,
I think it'll be hard to just outline just one social aspect. It's so interrelated and
Yeah, I didn't mean to imply that it wasn't using mental health at all. But again, I think this is just the first of hopefully many campaigns that are mass media. And this one, the focus of this one has been on excessive drinking, not to the exclusion of alcohol use disorder, but we're not focusing on alcohol use disorder. We're trying to raise awareness for people who think, oh, I drink alcohol, but I don't have a problem.
It's not really focused on the why, which may be a campaign in itself.
Yeah.
It's focused on how much.
Yeah, I would certainly welcome, at some point, the focus on the disease aspect of this thing and focusing on that group. It's a big deal, as I'm sure you're aware. Yeah, and I would love us at some point to be able to talk about alcoholism like somebody talks about breast cancer, or you got diabetes, or, get it out in the open and talk about it. It still has this thing to it. You could help open that up some more.
Well, also, this really speaks to me, so I appreciate what you have said. Because especially this second year, I'm thinking about what's around us. And so that is a huge time where social drinking is very important. People a lot of times come to that not to see the rodeo, but to have a good experience with their friends and parties. And I think that's what's going on, not only with the film from now, that's what your direct service represents, but also with Hermiston Fair. There's all kinds of get-togethers. I think in the last 6 months I've gotten together more with friends and family than I have in 2 years prior to that. So I think that there is also a FOMO going on. You're missing out with a lot of people, and a lot of people are catching up on this time. So I really hear what you're saying, and I've witnessed, I'd say in the last 9 months, especially as they're now getting over COVID and other different that this is something that will resonate with a lot of different types of people. So I appreciate this, and I think it's step in the right direction.
It's been a good discussion. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Well, the next item is something I really don't want to do, but I guess we have to do it. So we have to recognize Kelly Rout for her service, and the reason I don't want to do it is I don't want you to go. Steve?
So Kelly, you can go ahead and come forward. Yeah, Kelly's leaving. She's been here 17 years, and I actually had to get all the names of your jobs written down. Case presenter, policy analyst, director of hearings, licensing alcohol manager, which I had somehow missed or forgotten. I can't remember when that was. And then the PACE records and policy rules advisor for us. She's been stalwart there for us. One of the ones that always got the job done. You could always call on Kelly and know in great stead she would, do the work, make it happen for us. Always appreciated what she's brought to the agency to make us better along the way. She's handled some of the tough things. I'm thinking copper cane and around the wineries and otherwise. But she's got a great opportunity to utilize her law degree as a full lawyer, so she could actually help other agencies by telling them no and yes. And that's the thing she really understands from this side of working in an agency. So I think she's going to be a great value to DOJ in her next role. And I am presenting to her Rich had made for the executive team to give out challenge coins in the great, tradition of public safety. Rich had these made for us to give out. So a special recognition for all of them. Stand up. Can we like stand up? Or with the committee? Yeah.
Well, you want to come down there?
Yeah. Or you want to do that? Okay.
You want to come
Yeah, well, they're coming around. We're going to do the full meal deal.
Oh, boy. Casual August.
Send us a picture of it too. Kelly, you want to say a couple of words, please? If you-
Not to put you on the spot.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for the opportunity. It's really been an honor to work here. I've really enjoyed it. Obviously, I've been here for 17 years. I really appreciate all of the opportunities they've given me and so that they've really set me up for success for this next endeavor, which I've been a career goal for a long time. So thank you so much. I will miss working with all of you.
You're not going to do well if you don't talk more as a lawyer.
I'm safe.
On behalf of the commission, you've done a wonderful job for us. We really appreciate you. And we're very happy, seriously, that you're going on to do something that you like, that you're going to enjoy, and that it's good for you. So we're all happy for you.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
And don't forget us.
I won't. How can I?
When do you start the new job?
In September.
Quarterly business review and warehouse update. Chris, you have to stay at least 2 minutes.
I'm gonna give you.
Figure out,
I'm
you
gonna give
gotta,
a good
you gotta
teacher.
figure out something to stay here for at least 2 minutes.
Can I bring some guests up with me?
Yeah, do whatever you
Yes,
want.
absolutely.
Brian? Good morning, Chair. Good morning, Commissioners.
Good morning.
For the record, my name is Chris Mayton. I'm the Distilled Spirits Program Director, and I brought 2 great colleagues with me. To my left is Nikki Leslie, Distribution and Purchasing Director. To my right would normally be Brian Plummy, but he's on vacation, so he's got his counterpart, Brian Aker, which you all know, representing him. I'll start first. I have a presentation for you, but I have also a warehouse update. I'll do the warehouse update first. It's not in the presentation, but it's pretty short. Design meetings are ongoing and continuous, and they're on track, so that's a good thing. You know, we bought the purchase closed on the property last month, and we're working on the design and development of the architecture. Land use discussions are in process with the city. We've been working with a new hired consultant with the architect called PDC, which is going to help with the way the building is laid out on the land itself, and then how the warehouse itself will be laid out for conveyor system and racking. And then lastly, there are contract amendments, and RFP portion for the CMGC is still ongoing and in process. The project is a little bit delayed from an IT standpoint, as you are well aware of all of the obstacles that we have to go through in order to get approval through different stage gates. But Boba has that handled, and his team is doing a great job with it. But that's 3 years down the road from now. But it's all working in progress. The next part of this is really the Distilled Spirits Program fiscal year 2022 update. I wanted to give you. I used to give you a QBR that had a lot of detail and a lot of weeds in it. So I changed it a little bit to kind of bring it up about 50,000 foot view, just to give an overview of our business for the 12 months preceding. If you go to the next slide. The spirit sales did grow 5.2%. And I'll get more into that in just a minute. But one of the things I liked about following up after listening to Rethink the Drink, spirit volume, so even though our sales was up, spirit volume was down 1.5%. And I'll talk about that a little bit more in a couple slides. So when they talked in the previous presentation about alcohol, they're including beer, wine, and spirit. So I'm just talking about the spirit section when I say the volume there. We have had 35 straight years of fiscal year revenue gains. Revenue in this case is sales. The last time a distilled spirit sales in the state of Oregon went backwards was in 1987. So that's just a little context if you didn't know that. Growth in this category was driven by the reopening of bars and restaurants and also premiumization. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in the slides ahead. And then a little bit of that was also driven by population growth, which for the last year was 0.89%. Next slide, please. I'll talk a little bit about the marketplace trends. Next slide. This is some of the details. Total revenue increased from $786 million in 2021 to $827 million in 2022. That's plus $40.9 million, or a total of 5.2%. That volume decreased by 500 million milliliters. And I thought milliliters might not be understandable to everybody, so I changed that to an equivalent. I put a 750 ml bottle, which is a standard fit. That's approximately 658,000 less bottles sold in fiscal year 2022. So,
Even though we had sales growth, we had more than a 500,000 less bottles sold. So where did that
Same
go?
as the car industry.
Where did that growth come from? The main drivers for that, as you see on the right side, were our on-premise sales were growing, and then the premiumization across all categories. People were buying up. They're buying less alcohol, but they're buying more premium alcohol. Next slide, please. Over the past 15 years, Oregon's average annual growth rate has been approximately 5.4%, compared to 6.7% over the last 5 years. Some of that driven by the alcohol hoarding that took place in 2020. But also, spirits are just experienced their fastest growth in a decade. And a lot of that is driven by the premiumization of products and the price inflation. That's what happened. Next slide, please. This is about licensee revenues. I thought it was important to share. I got 2 slides on it. Licensee revenue are recovering after the COVID-19 closures that took effect in 2020 and 2021, while consumer revenues continue to shift back to pre-pandemic levels. The sales ratio for the period is right now about 80-20 for that rolling 12. And if you're a historian, you know, it's typically been 75-25, 75% consumer, 25 licensee. Over the last 5 years, that number's been creeping up a little bit because we've been doing store expansion, so we've been getting more consumer sales. I would say a real average would be 77-23. That was probably pre-pandemic, so 2019, and we're at 80-20. So we're getting really close to full recovery. Next slide there. This slide I thought was key to show you about the licensee bars and restaurants. Restaurant industry is recovering. However, they still experience COVID-19 and other challenges remain in their marketplace. Licensee sales compared to pre-pandemic levels are on the rise. If you look at the April, May, and June of 2019, there were approximately $40.8 million of sales, or an average of about $13.6 million a month. That same time period, licensee sales for 2022 in April, May, and June was $46.3 million, or $15.4 million a month average. That's an increase of about 13.5% since 2019. So that's good too. I think you show here where business is recovering for our licensees, just not fully there yet. Next slide. Consumer trends. Key trends continue as consumers embrace the at-home cocktails, ready to drink, premium spirits, convenience, and the return to dining now. Next slide. Vodka remains our top spirit category in both revenue and volume. You can see growing 195.5 or 0.8 billion of the market share, and domestic whiskey is coming in second. I got the top 5 listed. If the number's in blue, that's the amount of growth. If the number's got the negative symbol, it's red, it means the volume's been going. So you can see vodka. It's growing in dollars, but the volume, people are drinking less vodka. Next slide. Mezcal is the fastest growing spirits category in both revenue and volume. During our fiscal year 2022, you can see they're up 56.9% revenue, or just almost $1 million. And then the volume was up again, 59.5%. Cachaca is number 2. I've been asked, what is cachaca? That's Brazilian rum, if you don't know. There wasn't a lot of products in it, so it's a growing emerging market in Oregon over the last year. And then cocktails, and I'll talk about that in a couple slides ahead. Next slide, please. Tequila, and this one's key. I think it's important to note that tequila is the second fastest growing spirits category in our fiscal year 2022, and it accounts for the largest amount of growth of our overall increase. So we were up $40.9 million in 2022. 43% of that, or $17.5 million, came from the tequila category itself. So the tequila is still a very large portion of our growth.
Now, next year, there'll be something else?
There'll still be tequila.
Huh?
I'm guessing tequila again.
Still tequila?
It's been tequila for how many years running?
It's been a couple of years, and right now with the shortage is still there, so the demand is still pretty high right now.
So, Nikki, I won't hold you to it. Take a guess of what it'll be next year. What
You want me
percentage?
to guess? Percentage? I would say tequila, and I'm looking at probably even about 15.
15?
I think.
Okay. I'll hold you to it.
No, I think I'm right. I'm just kidding.
Next slide, please. I put this, and this is a big topic. A lot of discussions, we're talking about canned cocktails, at least in the circle. So I just wanted to give it the overall look at it and why. RTD spirits continue to chip away at beer and wine drink occasions. Low alcohol innovation is gaining traction, continues to gain traction, as canned cocktails is the fastest growing spirits category that we have. It is the largest. You can see revenue went from 2.5 million to 4.5 million, or almost doubled. $2 million, up 79.8%. The volume is in the slide in the middle. But it's also important to note that canned cocktails are an overall very small portion of the Oregon spirit business, as it makes up only 0.05% of the total volume. So you can see that little thin wedge of what it is. So it is the fastest growing category, but it's also the smallest. And if you ask Nikki, it also takes up the most space in the warehouse. That's the volume will tell you in the liquor store as well. Next slide, please. The next slide, I'm not going to read to you all the details on it. You can read it yourself, but it's really about the macroeconomic trends that are impacting future growth, not just here in Oregon, but nationally that impact our business. Next slide. So if you look at inflation, costs are rising across the board. You look at the workforce shortages continue. Nikki will tell you we have on average right now about 16 absent every day in our warehouse, and we only have 39 people that work in there during the day shift. So it's almost half. And on a Monday or Friday, we could have 56 to 60% people missing or absent. It's just a challenge, and it's not just here; it's happening nationally.
So they're full-time employees too.
And it's temporary and full-time. Yeah.
Well,
Just to give you a glimpse, like on Monday, day shift, we have 39 total employees, including temp and full-time. I had a total basically absent, I had 16 employees show up that I can actually basically out the door. Don't know how we did it, but we did it.
well, do they know that? I don't understand. I just don't understand. And you have the same problem.
Oh, yeah.
Everybody has the same problem, but where did the workforce go?
I wish I could tell you at home.
Yeah, I know. They're
stay
working
home.
2 jobs from home? They're not working at all?
Some of the national data that I've read, and I don't have this in the presentation, but to your point, Commissioner Reval, they went home. And they said that the phrase I'm thinking of is when they left the work they were at, the question was asked in the survey, what is your expectation of your work for this next year? And I believe it was 25% of those people asked that they expected not to work for anyone but themselves. So people have left their jobs, gone home, and started their own business or stopped working. And looking at the way inflation is working, I don't think they stopped working. I think they started to do things for themselves. And I think COVID had a lot to do with that. They may have lost their job with home, and then they started their own entrepreneurial business. And that's America. You go home and start that. So that's good, but it puts a real strain and strife on businesses that relied on the population to come to work. What we used to experience 7 to 10 people absent in a whole day, we now have 15 to 25 on any day.
Are they only gone on Monday and they come back Tuesday?
The worst days are Monday and Friday.
But Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday are in.
They're still low, or lower, but there's still a lot of absenteeism on. I think how many do we have absent today? It's
Today we
Thursday.
have 18.
How
So
many,
what we,
Do
and
they
that's
call
how we
up?
do it, right?
Do they call up and say they're not coming in?
Yeah, we have a process
We have a
that they have to
process.
follow.
We have
Otherwise,
some,
it'd be unapproved.
Are they docked for the times that they don't come in?
well, it depends if they have this time or not, we have to follow all this, if they're,
So they have time, they have either their sick time or they have vacation time
Or
or
they have
they have FMLA time. They have, employees have the time that they earn and they use it appropriately. If they call in and they don't have the time, then that is a violation to the contract where they could be held accountable for missed time. And that's typically not the issues we're dealing with.
And then what do you do if they don't have the time?
If they are unauthorized absence, then they get a letter of warning, get a letter of expectation, and they get a verbal warning. They go through the stages of the contract for discipline.
You're saying though that the Monday and today, employees aren't doing that, they're all excused, the majority and large majority of them are excused. I mean, they're using.
We call them unplanned absences, not, they will be excused by their manager if they follow the protocols, as far as calling. But we have planned absences, and we have, a certain number of employees that can schedule be in the be off. And then we have unplanned, which are call-in, people that call out. You typically expect to have a call out, somebody that says they're sick or they have an issue, they can't make it. Those absences initially are unauthorized or unplanned. And then as soon as they're reviewed, as long as they have the time in the books, they become approved.
Well, I mean, I would think and hope that you are joining the rest of the country and putting out, we're hiring.
Yeah, we actually have, every Friday, looking for temp, we do have like an open where an invite out, they apply work day, send an invite, show up between 12. We have an open. Right now, last week we had 2. So, and we basically, and we can take them out, they can lift cases, but that's a part of it, right? Lift the cases, put the label on, and put them, And a lot of time is, they come, they work a day too. That's put in.
The organization has constant hiring notifications on LinkedIn daily, throughout the day. So,
I would assume that there is
Yeah.
not a big difference between pre-pandemic and post-pandemic amount of leave that was experienced. So it's just maybe the amount of that is used.
Well, we do have, I'll be clear, we have, right now, we have stations, we have 6 stations. And then we have, employees that may be on the book for vacation, we usually have on board. And then we have employees that could be on, like an injury or whatever it is, it's also account, we have to account for those too. So typically right now, if we count those and just on the book, we can have 13 or 14 in any given day. And then we add any call out in, that's when it really could for us, to interest to that point. And we do, as Chris said, we look at if they don't have time, we follow the process. But of course, process is right sometimes.
So they're just like 4-day weekends, what they like.
For some, and to answer your question, Commissioner, we do have a great relationship with our HR department. We have a constant running ad for full-time employee and for temporary employee, nonstop. We do weekly interviews. The question isn't, are we not trying to promote the opportunity? The question is, we're not drawing people into the opportunity. And so then you change things in the ads, try to, get more people and be more flexible with hours or, but as a state agency, we're limited on what we can offer compared to a private sector when it comes to top line wage increases or sign-on bonuses or other types of incentives that you draw people in. So, but we are very creative and try to be very creative and do the best we can to recruit people, but we certainly didn't help anyone with.
Real disposable income in the country is at its very highest level. There'll be a period of time in the near future where that will change.
it's
Then the
important to
whole
also
outlook
realize
will change.
that this is not just this type of work. In our client base, it is up and down the line for people at any professional level or non-professional level, the same type of situation. And people did go away, and we're ensuring more small, very small companies, people who 1 or 2 employees were left out. And people have a lot of money, but they're not working for companies.
Exactly, but that's going to change.
So right now, we just do what we can. We every day come in, we look at where the priority is. Our priority is focus out the door.
Oh, heck, Nikki, I can lift boxes.
Oh, right.
No, you can't.
Trust me, I tried to do it a couple times. By the time I go home, I'm like this. Oh my god.
The last 3 bullets after workforce shortages, supply chain challenges are severe. They are severe. They're improving though. We're getting more of our product in. That's another plus and minus. Good thing, we're getting more product. Downside is our warehouse isn't any bigger yet. So it's constraining us. The economy did finish strong in 2021, but as Chair just said, the growth is expected to slow. Real disposable income is still higher than it was pre-pandemic level, but I don't think that will last forever. That will change, and I think the workforce will realize itself, but I'm not sure how soon that. I definitely know it won't. But with that, that's kind of my recap on 2022, a good year in sales. Big highlight is volume was down. So I think that's important. Premiumization, as you know, is when you walk into a liquor store, and Brian can probably talk more about this, they waterfall the shelf, right? So premium's up on the top, cheap's on the bottom. We did a couple things over the last 2 years. One of them was price floor. Try to get cheap, not so cheap, and bring it up a little bit, and equalize some of that playing field. And we're still looking at the results to see what kind of impact that had. But people are choosing a more premium, and tequila is a great look into that, because there's a lot of tequila coming onto the market today, and a lot of higher end tequila that people are choosing to have at home occasions. So they buy up a little bit, but they buy less, and then that buying less, in my mind, hopefully, helps curb health impacts that we all heard about earlier.
I'll make that point earlier. There's a lot of standard where manufacturers are going, where marketing is going, and the retail drink. That mindfulness about what you're doing. People want to buy up, drink a little less. Craft cocktails are in. So I thought that was a really important discussion. I'm glad Chris brought it up. There is some synergy between what they're doing with minimum floor pricing as well. Take that. One of the things in that respect is, well, I want to make sure our information helps with that data for the consumer to look like that dosage and it's really important. Hopefully at the same time, our stores will be filling them up.
I have a quick question. Is there some way that some of the operations or the systems can be mechanized so that you don't need any bodies?
That's part of our plan for the future, but we don't want to reduce the number of bodies. We have a contract with the union to have those bodies used, but we can increase our efficiency through automation, and we are looking to do that in the new warehouse. Definitely. That way, we won't have to hire them. We're not necessarily going to let anybody go. We're not going to.
You're getting to be a politician.
And we did that about old guy. We did that with the warehouse. So everything you see in the warehouse now, when you go in there and the racks are all moving, when I got here, it was all just stacked on top of each other.
One belt.
One belt, and the boxes are stacked on top of each other, and men and women are running around grabbing this.
And a person in a bird cage above counting every box.
Right.
Look at that.
And so it is. So all that wasn't there.
We were
When
shipping
Matt
out of
got
one
here,
store.
that's when we did that. And we got to go out and touch everything and have hard hats on and get out of the way.
Yeah, one door at a time. And
One door at a time.
and sometimes we shoot till like 4 a.m.
Wow.
So it's automated.
Yeah.
Now we don't have to go to midnight or 1 o'clock.
I'm impressed with you. Any other questions? I'm gonna take the prerogative and take a 5-minute break before we, maybe 7 minutes before we get to you.
Okay.
Thank you. We're back. The floor is yours, Brian.
Okay, thank you, Chair Rosenbaum and Commissioners. For the record, Brian Aker, District Manager for Retail Services, going in for Greg Fleming. I'm here today to present before you the following retail services business. We have 12 retail sales agent agreement renewals, and we have 2 spouse child permanent appointments, one for store 1180 Wallaton and 1201 NCP. So tab A is renewals for you. We bring these to you every 6 months, at least 120 days before the expiration of the existing agreement. The agreement and retail operations manual states the reappointment term is dependent upon performance determined by agent evaluation. Agents are eligible for a 5-year reappointment if the average score of the past 3 evaluations is satisfactory, and a 10-year renewal if the average score of the past 3 evaluations is outstanding. Under the reappointment criteria, we have 7 agents that have met the terms of the agreement and are eligible for a 5-year renewal, and 5 agents eligible for a 10-year renewal. Staff recommends the commissioner reappoint agents as.
Any discussion? If you're making the motion, we'll probably pass it. If Brian Fleming isn't making the motion, we'll probably.
Chair,
Yes, Commissioner.
I move to approve the renewal of the 12 agent agreements listed in the material.
Adam?
Commissioner Curran?
Yes.
Commissioner Doherty?
Yes.
Commissioner Floyd?
Yes.
Commissioner Chapon Porter?
Yes.
Commissioner Melitas?
Yes.
Commissioner Revolt?
Yes.
Chair Rosenbaum?
Yes. Okay.
Okay, moving on to tab B, I'd like to invite Angela Smulders up front. Angela has been the temporary agent for us. Her father, Vance Burgard, had a medical retirement. He was with an agent for 22 years, ran 10th Avenue downtown for most of his career, and then got the full work. And Angela was over in Europe, and when Vance started having medical problems, and she came home and worked with Vance and started learning the liquor business. It's done a fabulous job. Some of the highlights since she took over in last August or September, they obtained an additional 1,500 square feet next door. They could work the wall out. Put new shelving in, reconfigured the counter location in that store, which it flows a lot better now. Brought the sight lines down for security purposes. Installed 15-minute parking signs. They provide health insurance for all full-time staff, and they do have for a lot of stores, they have a low turnover. I feel that's because they treat their employees well. They've purchased a system to digitize store data, retention. They've repaired the front door, had new window wraps installed, and in keeping with the trend of the art talking, they've created an entire section of art, and so the additional space is really helpful. One of the highlights of her performance was they have a 3-month audit, and they got $150 over. So that was a fabulous audit performance. They've grown the license business and the compensation. She's done a fabulous job.
So, Brian, can I ask you a question before we get going here? Is there a relationship between the Milwaukee liquor store and the Toilet liquor store? There was, both of those were listed on a bank statement, I thought. So.
It might have been Westmoreland liquor. That was the first store that my dad had.
Okay.
And we actually are closing with US Bank.
Pardon me?
They keep changing all of the mailing addresses
Oh.
and signing the names on our system. So that was a mistake, and it's been corrected this time.
Okay. Thank you.
Chair Rosenbaum.
Commissioner.
I had the privilege of working with her family when the 10th Avenue to Walls, and that was a good experience. I appreciate all that family went through before and where you are now. So thank you very much.
Just out of curiosity, where were you in Europe?
Where or what?
Where were you living in Europe?
I was living in Germany.
No other question? I need a motion.
Chair,
Commissioner?
I move to appoint Angela K. Smulders as the permanent agent of store 1180 Tualatin, effective September 1st, 2022.
Adam?
Commissioner Curran, Commissioner Doherty,
Yes.
Commissioner Floyd,
Yes.
Commissioner Tripon Porter.
Yes.
Commissioner Melitas,
Yes.
Commissioner Revolt,
Yes.
Chair Rosenbaum.
Yes, please leave the roll open. Congratulations, good luck.
Thank you very much.
Make us some money.
Next up, we have, Rob and Stephanie Babin, 1201 Hampton Beach. Our largest counter business store, state. Over 10 million there on the counter. Rob took over for his father, Paul, back in July, also a medical retirement. Paul was with the commission for 21 years and ran the division store as well as one. And he gave up the division store to focus on cancer issues. Rob has been working as a manager for about 12 years at the store. He ran all the inventory, ordering, basically ran the whole operation for 12 years alongside his father. And he's done a fabulous job. One of his big strengths is inventory management. And his 3-month audit on $3 million in sales was only $24 short. Which is pretty spectacular. And 0.78% revenue rate for the web. So their system and practices of doing cycle count and testing their inventory and being on top of it is fantastic. The store was turnkey, really. Paul took really good care of that store, updated it when it needed to. Some of the things Rob has done is added additional height to the gondolas with some new shelving that are about 500 per period. They keep it really clean. He's repaired things in the store that needed it, painted the ceiling walls. And he's invested pretty heavily in some of the advertising for the store out there. And they're updating it. Where it's located there for future growth of the store is somewhat limited. The target has on properties around for so he's going to try to grow it where it fits, and I feel he's done a fantastic job. Rated permanent.
Excellent. That in the new bill that just passed in Congress, there's billions of dollars for the IRS, and I would suggest you make an appointment to go down there and get some of that money and teach them how to audit it, right? I need a motion.
Here,
Commissioner?
I move to appoint Robert A. Babin as permanent agent of store 1201 for effective September 1 of 2022.
Very impressive, thank you. Adam?
Commissioner Curran,
Yes.
Commissioner Doherty,
Yes.
Commissioner Floyd,
Yes.
Commissioner Tripon Porter, Commissioner Melitas,
Yes.
Commissioner Revolt,
Yes.
Chair Rosenbaum.
Yes, and while we're open, Commissioner Curran, you want to vote on the dwelling and so.
Yes.
Okay, thank you, good luck.
Thank you.
We're up to compliance. Surprisingly, we just got the marijuana ones. Good morning, I'm just asking a question before we get started. Does anybody have any particular problems with any of them? I do on the upscale, what do they call it?
Light scale?
Light scale. So it may save you guys time, and you go ahead and say what you want, and then knowing that we're okay except for light scale. We're trying to make your job easier.
Thank you, I appreciate that. For the record, my name is Nicole Mitchell with the Administrative Team.
And I'm Melanie Musil, also with it.
Welcome.
So, do you have any questions on anything other than the light facility?
Apparently not. So we're gonna separate light scale, and Adam, I need a motion for everything except light scale. Commissioner,
I move to ratify 3 related settlement agreements for 1111 Phillips Street, Gary Cannabis.
Adam,
Commissioner Curran?
Yes.
Commissioner Doherty?
Yes.
Commissioner Floyd?
Yes.
Commissioner Dupont Porter? Commissioner Melitas?
Yes.
Commissioner Revolt?
Yes.
Chair Rosenbaum?
yes. Would you talk to us about life scale first, please?
Sure. Lightscale is a laboratory licensee, and what occurred in this case was that they had reported marijuana test samples as having passed. But during that time, their equipment was not detecting certain pesticides. And so it wasn't reading the results correctly. A consumer reported that to OLCC, and the OLCC referred it to Oregon Health Authority, and ORLAB did an investigation, and they did find that there was some problems with the testing, and because of the cooperation with the licensing during the investigation, they allowed them to voluntarily withdraw their accreditation over the period of compliance, which they chose to do. Subsequently, they have been recertified, accredited by ORLAB, the organization that's in charge of monitoring and accrediting laboratories and
This was a conscious effort on their part to hide or fail to do it properly, right?
I would hesitate to say intentional, because the facts in this case show that the licensee, they had set the standards for the testing by a former employee when they first was licensed, and because the lab had been accredited and a few different times, they believed that they were in compliance with the rules. It was not something that I believe they were intentionally trying to hide.
Analysis stating that the samples did not contain actionable levels of any of the pesticides being tested for, therefore the samples passed pesticide testing, when in fact several of the pesticides would not have been able to have been detected due to equipment failure. Did they know that it was equipment failure?
There was a period of time when they believed that there was issues, and they attempted to change the parts of the machine, clean the parts, and because they were still certified by ORLAB, they believed that they were still in compliance. I believe they're aware of some issues going on. The extent of that, I
So here's the problem I have with this. From what I read on this, this was more than an equipment failure. This was an equipment failure that they knew it was an equipment failure, but passed it on anyway. Now, that's how I read it. And if I read it as correct, then one shouldn't it be more than a category 2 violation? I mean, we have very few labs in this state, and the consumers in this state have to be 100% sure that we're complying and doing it safely. So when a lab comes up with questionable results, we ought to have our eyes and ears open towards that. I mean, that's part of this commission, is to protect the public. I had a bad feeling about this one, only from the point of view is that, from what I understood, is that they could have been a lot more careful. Now, I'm going to vote against this, but that doesn't mean anything. I just ask staff to, in the future, when one of these come up, to look at it very carefully, because I really do want to understand whether or not it was an equipment failure that they were not cognizant of, or whether it was an equipment failure they were cognizant of and released it anyway, because that's a category 1 violation in my mind under any circumstance.
I've never been super clear on I should be, but like the Orlap, if like this Orlap signed off on it, and that was a big thing that factored in the settlement. Is that right? So, and I guess this is maybe like, does Orlap have like as robust investigative unit as we do? I mean, could it have just been that they rubber stamped it? I mean, that's not my only concern, is just that, like, you know, because like if we're giving deference to them, and we're just going to go, like, and then their check, I don't know, and they reissued the certificate. I mean, I don't know, has there been much conversation before last, like?
Not in here, the marijuana stuff. So our lab routinely recertifies them. They do that. They have to check the calibration for the equipment after they get certified at the time. So, you know, looks like kind of there with and got out of calibration. They thought it was there. And you know, from one perspective, right, this system worked, certification, it came back in, looked at it and made it work. But I agree, it's an intentionality here that would be really plain, right? I don't think we can show that in particular cases, but it's not a category 1 option to take a license for, you know, and you can think about when we look at classifications, we're going to be looking at it in rules, the financial penalties, yeah, there might be some things that you want to put in more serious. You know, but I didn't think in this case that we really were improving now in Orlap certification. They do good, they don't have much staff, they had a hard time running that case with us in prior years. Labs are getting kind of centered, you know, we got 20 labs, like 4 labs. So, you know, they're getting pretty good at work.
Well, I just want to bring it up.
And I don't think in this case, just rubber stamped it. They explained it in this case that, I mean, there are many analytes that they when they do go in and monitor, they test for some of them, but not every single one. So one of them, they
Nicole, just in the future, when these come up, just be cognizant of the comments when they, that's all. No further questions? Adam, will you want to take the roll? I don't know, we need a motion, right?
Chair, I move to
You're on
ratify.
a roll today.
I'm on a roll. I move to ratify Lightscale Labs stipulated settlement agreement as proposed by staff.
Commissioner Curran?
Yes.
Commissioner Doherty?
Yes.
Commissioner Floyd?
Yes.
Commissioner Javon Porter?
Yes.
Commissioner Melides?
Yes.
Commissioner Revolve?
Yes.
Chair Rosenbaum?
Out of principle, no. Okay, commissioner feedback on OLCC business not on the agenda. Thank you so much,
Thank you.
both of you.
Thank you.
Guys, anything? Steve?
Well, I'll just add to the certification process. We've just added in OHA does increased testing. And what we want, so we're adding factors in heavy metals in our regime now that they approve, which is something that, we didn't innovate earlier when there are regulations in place. So people are now readjusting their lab testing certification. I would like Jason Hanson to have an opportunity, your profession chair, when you'd like to come and talk to you about some of the issues we're having in the marijuana space with testing and additives and things being added in after our standardized test.
That'd be wonderful, except that I'm going to be very careful how I say this, and very diplomatic. Our hands are tied to a certain extent in terms of our ability. I would like us to have a little bit more control over the testing area, but that's not going to happen right now.
So we're going to have a couple of things that will help us. We're going to write in the budget. We're going to have the process of looking at market basket sampling and making sure that look at what the labs are doing to the final products that are in the marketplace. We're working on a partnership with Department of Agriculture to fund the reference lab that will help us do that. That's really important. The team has been doing some embryonic work with cross comparisons between labs as we look at trying to see how we're going to evaluate the adopting and differentiation. We're looking at how we improve that for the industry, for consumers, for licensees. Then we want to increase our staff to provide the oversight to get into the lab. We have enforcement on them, even though we don't have the standard for it, right? We have a substantial body of work to be able to work with all the science, the lab results of labs to provide oversight. People in the next budget to help us do that.
Boy, are you smooth?
That's not enough. Testing is still pretty embryonic. I know there are tons of things we don't test for. Right? If you would like to come up, I think this is an important message to our friends in the industry to make sure that they get some warning on what they're putting in their products out there.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair, members of the Commission. For the record, Jason Hanson, Director of Compliance with OLCC. I don't have a lot of details right now, but I want to share with you some concerns that we have based on the uptick that we're seeing on our evaluations for potential product recall. Internally, we have a product recall evaluation team. We have seen, we've done a few recalls over the course of the last 5 or 6 years. But what I have seen lately is a lot of potential likelihood and need for recall based on licensees not following proper testing rules, requirements, proper packaging, labeling requirements, things that are within our control, things that are within the licensee's control. 3 areas of interest that I just want to put on record as a concern. And number one, I want to say this is a first priority, public health. Second priority here, looking at the industry and their success, really being aware. We've had a lot of rule changes over the last couple of years, specifically around product labeling, scoring of product, testing requirements. Really imperative that they stay abreast of these rules and that they reach out if they have questions rather than just taking a stab at it, because that's what we're seeing. New people in the industry just running with stuff, making some decisions, missing some key pieces that can not only be a threat to public safety and public health, but also make a big dent in their own pocketbook. So a few things that that I want to point out. So what we were seeing more often lately, not proper testing of final product. That is not a change in rule. Final product needs compliance testing. Compliance testing includes pesticide, solvent, potency. These things, what we have seen on several occasions where people are adding terpenes to product, flavor profiles to things after they've done their compliance testing, will that change the profile of the product? The compliance testing needs to be included again. And so that's a concern. We're not sure what's in these terpenes. In some cases, it's terpenes that are trapped in the system. So it seems to be an unintentional choice, but that's hard to tell. What I would say is ensuring that the industry knows that before any product goes to market, nothing can be done to it after the compliance.
Is that a category 1? Okay.
Well, that would depend on the outcome of the investigation. So, and again, intentionality plays a role in that. So I'm not sure.
In what world wouldn't it be?
Well, it's hard to tell. It's hard to tell, and I don't have the specifics on. I'd love to get into some of the specific cases we have right now that we're looking at, but I can't.
What worse violation can you think of getting approval to go to the market and then changing the product?
Yeah. Well, one of the things I would share with you is that there are some of our changes to our testing. People aren't aware of that. So the general pesticide solvent testing that's been in place, testing for there's artificial cannabinoids. Let me pull up. I can pull up the. There's a documentation requirement that wasn't always in place for artificial cannabinoids, and so that by not doing that up front, that's a part of that process. So it's not necessarily intentional. We weren't always testing hard metals is a good example. That's a new rule as of July 1 of this year. So I agree. This is extremely important, and we are making this a top priority of what we're doing. Product integrity, product quality is really important for everyone. So that's the first thing I wanted to address. The second issue that we're seeing is newer businesses doing flavored vapes. I kind of just made reference to this. They're less familiar with the requirements for non-cannabis additives. Again, you're required to list all non-cannabis additives in advance. You have forms for this that you'll include information on those additives. So it's really important that you're advising us before you do so. They're not always the required documentation is not always disclosed up front. So I just want to say to the licensees, to the industry out there, please reach out to us. We are available to help you with this. The goal is to help you be successful. But if we don't know about it, we find it out after the fact. We are absolutely putting measures in place to stop sell the product when necessary. Additional costs are incurred when you don't do this properly. So that's really important. Again, also third, the new rules on storing and testing combined with a handful of businesses not proactively asking or clarifying what the requirements are before they jump in. Again, that's where people are trying to evolve. They're trying to keep up with their partners in the industry. I imagine there's no excuse for staying aware of what our rules are, especially around product quality, product health. So, you can be reached by a number of different avenues. I put my contact information out there. I will directly connect people with the right people inside the agency to help them with this stuff. But I do want to make it clear that we are pursuing, anytime we have a concern, in some cases we see things based on labels that are submitted. It's concerned that people are acting outside of their license privileges, not understanding what their actual license allows them to do, the process or to change the product that they have, you need a processor license. And some people aren't understanding of that. They think it's a very small change that they're making to the product. They're adding something to the product. It's not the same as extracting product at a higher level. That's a concern. So being very familiar with what your actual license privileges allow you to do is extremely important. And if there's a question before you do anything, I just would advise the industry to reach out. Avoid a lot of concerns, a lot of public health concerns, and a lot of input or impact on their own pocket.
So how are you conveying that to the new licensing and following up on that?
Which part?
Well, some things that they're altering after the final testing.
So, we learn of this through a number of ways. So we have inspectors that will directly reach out when we have a concern, and we have staff internally that are doing audit of the metric system when we're looking at products and seeing, how product is moving through the system. And we find this stuff by doing proactive audits. Sometimes we find this through a number of different ways. We reach out directly to the licensee, investigate, ask what's going on, try to understand what happened. If we determine that there is a public health need of concern, maybe there's a prohibited item in the product that was unknown or wasn't properly accounted for, then we let them know, we're right up front, very transparent, what this looks like. At the very beginning of most of these cases, we let people know that this may eventually result in a recall of the product, which is a big deal. Because, I mean, in some cases, that could be a lot of time spent and money spent on developing these products, putting them to market, a lot of risk in their own business, personal, civil risk to them. So we try to tell people right up front what the potential circumstances or the violations that they're looking at and the outcome of those violations. So we communicate as much as we can throughout the process.
You finished, I don't want to jump in, go ahead.
No, kind of, just didn't.
Yeah.
I just don't understand, right, so you stated that you are finding most of these violations with newer licenses, correct?
Not necessarily. There are newer licensees who aren't understanding the evolving part of the business. So flavored vapes is a big part of the industry right now. There's been changes of the rules, and licensees who aren't maybe as familiar with the system, maybe not paying attention to our compliance bulletins. We put out education bulletins, compliance bulletins, rule changes. We update our website. We put out information quite a bit when these changes occur. And so, it seems though that some people aren't taking them as serious or aren't understanding them enough before they're making business decisions and how they're going to make their product, or having the proper controls in place. And so, yeah, I don't want to say that this is only newer people to the industry. This is people from the beginning to the end. I mean, they could be anybody.
I think that was my question is there, are we missing something? This has come up before where they don't understand their license, what that permits them to do. And what it sounds like you're saying is we're communicating with them. I want to see if there's any fault on our part that they don't understand their license. And you're saying we're giving all the information out there.
It's a complicated industry. It's an evolving new industry still. I would say that, we have all the information you need to know is available to you in a number of different forms. And we're available at all times. What I can say is people need to take the effort, take the energy to reach out to us before making assumptions or truly understanding what it is they're doing.
Jason?
Yeah.
Because, folks are listening. What are those forums? What are those platforms for licensees when they do have questions? Because, rules evolve and change. And what are those platforms that they can decide to reach out to staff members? What are those?
So first and foremost, at the outset, being a part of our rules advisory committee, being a part of the organization when rules are being adopted or changed, that's a great place to be connected. Our website has all kinds of information. I don't have it. I put it up if I was prepared to talk about that. I would show you and navigate through where these things are. Reaching out generally to marijuana@oregon.gov is our fail-safe. So if you have a question about anything, reach out to that email and we'll direct you to the right people. We have compliance bulletins that we put out when things change. Education bulletins that come out when things change. Those are on our website as well. They're emailed, they're posted. We work with the media often when we have large changes occur to help utilize their resources to get it to people. I'm not. I think that about covers it.
Yeah, no, that is, the bulk of it's online. For
The bulk
people
of it
have
is
any
online.
questions,
Sure.
the bulk of it's online.
It sounds,
Remember, we switched our process. We still hold their hand all the way through to make sure you didn't make a mistake, you didn't do it. Now we're saying, read the rules. We have a lot of channels. All the information is available somewhere. You can ask for it. But you've got the responsibility on you. And you can always, we've got the VOC program, right? Where someone in the field can provide them instructions, but don't do this, you get a warning, you correct the behavior, and you're on in the right direction. So switch away from making sure that we're holding the hand and saying everything is coming to you. There's more experience involved, licensee base with a lot of consultants and a lot of expertise now around this industry to help them do it right. And so we switch our philosophy of it as an agency about how we move forward. So as Amanda Borg always says, we started to read the rules.
So that was one of the things I was talking about. At the beginning, Matt, there was a lot of, we had people in here. They would come in and basically hold their hand. And frankly, we run out of people. So it's technology now. Good thing is it's technology. The bad thing is technology. It was a lot more personable, which was also very frustrating. Because you had a lot of people coming into the industry that had no business sense whatsoever. Literally was doing this in their back rooms, and they would tell us that, well, you can't make me do this. Well, yeah, I can. So now we're big, or we don't get to see people face to face as much. And unfortunately, we're not going to. So it is going to be incumbent upon the cannabis community to step up to the plate. And that's been something that continues to worry me. Alcohol, been around a long time. You know the rules, you know where to find the rules. Cannabis, we don't know the rules. We're not used to following rules. Now we have rules. And we don't have the staff to hold their hand anymore.
Everything you said is correct. I agree with you 100%. It doesn't take a genius to figure out. You get final approval on something. You don't mess with it afterwards. I mean, that's intuitive with anybody who's got a 55 IQ and higher.
What did I say about people not having business sense?
Well, so one of the things is maybe we need to put a press release out.
That's forthcoming, and so I wanted
But
to.
a very specific one, not erudite in any way, shape, or form. You get final approval, that's what goes out. You start messing with it, it's a category 1 and your license is going to be taken away from you. That's, to me, do it your way. I mean, I'm just throwing it against you. You get the general.
I'm just looking at our past decisions, decisions you've made on violations prior here and the way we want to move to more seriousness, right? We need to put that out, some of our rules and penalties, and then we can implement that change as a policy. Some of these things that they're faced with, terpenes were not always commonly understood as a marijuana item initially, even though they're flavor proof.
If there's anybody on this commission that disagrees with the fact that if you get final approval, you start messing with the product, that they shouldn't be penalized on that, please speak up. We're pretty much in agreement, I think, on so, whatever diplomatic way you have to do it. But there's 7 people over here that are selling it.
I've argued the very same thing. The point I'm making is it wasn't always clear that you regulated final testing on the marijuana product, the marijuana item. Some of the additives, some of the things that were being used, particularly in vape, are unclear about where those parts were tested in the process. So I just want to put that out. That was part of the earlier problem. Now we got a much better set of final product moving forward. We got more definition around additives getting tested. BBN was happy to learn now additive that they're putting the research dollars in to look at that so that the producer of that additive is actually getting one of the ones with cross standards in the system. So we're getting better at making sure the final product is all tested in the final packaging.
The last word, I don't want to prolong this. You have the ability as the executive director, you're involved in the day-to-day activities. We support you 100%. Our job is on a policy basis. You just heard 7 people tell you where the hell we're going on this thing.
Not going anywhere that they can do not.
All right. That's enough. And this is, you hit a chord with us on this.
Well, good, and this is not just Oregon. I just want to kind of find it end of this. This is something that happened nationally on all of it. hemp side, marijuana side, there was concerns about proper, effective labeling, accurate labeling of product from potency to proper testing. This is an issue we're seeing across the board. We're spending a lot of time on it. We're spending more time than we used to here, and rightfully so. We'll continue. We do work, you mentioned verification of compliance. We utilize that. When we find this stuff out, when they reach out to us, that's a great thing. When they identify that there was an error, there was a mistake made, and they reach out for help, that makes a big impact on the end result. It is really important, though, that people just understand what they're doing. And if they don't know, again, utilize the email address, marijuana@oregon.gov, and we will get you to the right person, the right place to help. We got plenty of people here and available all the time to help. So that's a big, that's a thing I'm trying to say.
Chairman, I'd just like to ask, is my impression, did all this packaging and labeling rule changes, to my knowledge, the only thing that I've really dealt with is people calling for the how you support them.
Yeah.
I've not got a phone call about a packaging approval. I've got a lot of industry talking about they had to make investments and it cost them money, but I'm not seeing or hearing a length about that moving forward or seeing other plans.
Well, we've had,
out there, Jason.
yeah, we've had some, one a few months ago about the scoring issue, and machines weren't, the molds they were using weren't properly scoring by definition. What scoring means, I don't have that definition in front of me, but it makes a clear demarcation in the product so that it's clear to the consumer what a dose is or what a serving size is. There were changes that people had to make to their manufacturing and how they created the product. It's really important because we increased the potency in these products. So that was extra important. So that hasn't been as big of a concern lately that I've seen, but also not representing our packaging labeling portion of the but truly, again, just getting abreast with our rule changes, reaching out. We're as transparent as possible. And the goal is to get it right the first time as much as possible.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't ask very often, but on that press release, will you please share it with the entire commission before it goes out?
Yes, there would be more than one, but I will make sure that there is one that we were planning on doing that was a general reminder of the concern of our increase in product recall valuations. And that's the one I think you're referring to. And I will make sure that it gets to the commission before we send it out.
Thank
Lay
you.
on it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Quarterly IT update, it's Cobra. Come on up. Christie? Who's going first?
I think I'll go first. For the record, my name is Boba Subasic. I'm Chief Information Officer, OLC. Chairman Rosenbaum expressed interest. But I want to go for us to come in just with an update from time to time. We're talking about the quarterly, so people at that time, so we figured out it would be nice to come in and do back an update where we are. We've got a lot of going on, so start. Right. So the current very exciting thing that's happening right now is we did, and I think we mentioned last time, we actually did a contract with Macroeconomic. Their successful in our process, and now we actually get put our hands on the product. Started the gas station sessions on August 9th, this year, and I think that we're getting a lot of excitement from that. This is kind of the first phase in any new software. This is where we already know whether we had our requirements posted out there, what the company we're bidding on our RFP, but you never get 100% match on for every customer of their software that what you want. This first phase, we can do how closely the product matches what our process does, what our well, and get it identified where the gaps are, and then we go back and we're completing the software. But there's always a process going with software. So there's a very good time, lots of work that goes with the customer. Those sessions are very excited because again, during the RFPs, we got the demos on how the software works, but it's guided by the vendor. You don't get to try it yourself. Now we actually have our own staff. That's what the vendors did for us. They created a test environment, like a playground, based on what they did throughout the RFP process of how we want the software to address our needs. And they did the best they could because they was one that they cover in the app section. That's what I put back on how we want the software configured. So far, and we're going to be doing this every week. So we have sessions going on every week. We have a different group, stakeholder groups that come in, participate with the vendor. When they're last week we had them on site, so we have a lot of vendor staff here, very interactive. And this week we're doing it remote. Again, this is going to be going for a while. Various phases of the implementation. Marijuana licensing is a part of this phase 1 that we're doing right now, and scheduled to go live in October 2023. Next slide. These are some of the comments that came out of this session, and I'm very excited to see this type of a comment early on, right as we first time getting our hands on it. You can see the staff that were able to have pick on the Christmas tree, but now we have to wait to open the present. Very excited that Ken was actually getting brought. Somebody else said I can't wait until the next FinGap session. Also very exciting because this is a lot of work, very intense work. So people actually say they're excited until the next one. It's great.
It's unusual. It's great.
Yeah, it is not. So I'm very happy that we're in this place. Somebody else said that it's like we're already in a good spot so early with the development process. Again, very quickly, very early, I mean, 2 weeks span, people are like, oh, it's already done a lot of these things, and we're just starting to do it this week. So, again, I don't want to jinx anything, but so far, a lot of excitement. They're looking very good.
Yeah, next week it'll have so many damn problems that won't be able to look at it.
That's possible. That's why I don't want to jinx it.
No, it's true. I mean, I've been through this so many times, but it's great that you're at this point today. Yeah.
I think we want to give you as much good news as Bill's bad news come up. Still Spirit supply chain. So this is the RFP process that we've been working on for our different part of our organization, the Spirit supply chain. So we are working still with desk procurement services. And the DOJ and Enterprise Information Services and Cyber Services, so various oversight bodies, they're involved in this process. We are almost done. We are getting really close to being able to release this RFP. There were several factors that were involved in delay that we have experienced based on our timeline when we were trying to hit. One of them is, as I guess my colleague Christine talked earlier about, the staffing shortage. We're over this, but we have the same problem with our oversight agency. They're having a lot of staff turnover. They don't have enough staff. We have the same thing. We're seeing as procurement services. We're having similar things in DOJ, and there's just not enough people. No matter where you look at, we're seeing the same problem. So I
am just going to be diplomatic, keep my mouth shut.
No comment. So we take that factor and then added to the fact that we're competing with pretty much all the other state agencies. Most of them are going through the one or next phase of the modernization, technology modernization projects. So we are a big pool of other customers of oversight agencies that we're competing for their time, for their being for their attention. So that's another factor that we're dealing with here. Again, staffing turnover, we have the same issue with our partners in the private sector with our contracting services. They're losing staff, or they're bringing the new staff, and then we're talking here about now IT as a district, the contract with the RDI that we're having, and the base for the staff, just for the talent, IT is as bad as ever was. It's so competitive, so they're trying to make sure that they get out of the state's win. So we've been kind of just having to deal with that as we go. Onboarding new people is never easy, especially that project that is complex. We have to have our staff that then spend time with staff that's coming on board and kind of getting them up and getting the project. So but it is what it is. It's not just us. The whole world. Yeah, especially very competitive. Very high complexity of solicitation and multiple system vendors being procured. Each of these components by itself would be pretty complex, but we have all of it going on at the same time. And then combining with the fact that we're going to have a new facilities and a new warehouse being built, new administrative building. So all of that, and kind of getting on top of getting old technology replaced at the same time. Very high complexity of the procurement. We have going to have a building. We're going to have the conveyor belt. They're going to be a whole new hardware in the warehouse. And our new warehouse management system, our new point of sale, possibly the notification system, our ERP systems. All of that is going to have kind of work with each other at the same time. And I think what we should be building. So putting all of that in our process is not fast. And we're making sure with all our oversight partners, nothing major gets left out because there's a lot of things. This is just kind of, I mentioned, I think last time we were here, we just like to put out here, besides our, that we have for the actual products, we have a contract that we are managing and partners that we have been working along. We initiated amortization program. First two I already mentioned before, so our planning integration consultant, resource data. I mentioned them earlier that they have to turn over their staff, and we've been working with them all along. So they also supplement our bandwidth and our resources when it comes to project management, business analysis, testing, data migration, consultation, and so forth. Dependent quality management services, Gartner is a partner that is with us. So the third party oversight required by the data state. So we have been again working with them all along. There's not that much new. I guess the third bullet that I have here is that I kind of put the one on the focus now. For one, we're working on this contract and we're getting really close. We're interviewing the top candidates, the top vendors, company, the week of August 22nd. So pretty soon, hopefully, we'll have this contract in place. The reason that I want to kind of talk about this is one of the, we had a monthly CIO council this Tuesday, which is a monthly event that happens with all the state agencies. And I have my peers from CIOs from all of the agencies. One month, and we have a representative from state enterprise information services, which is our general state CIO's office. And kind of interesting because we got to look at other agencies we're dealing with and what happened. And one of the common things that is coming along, all of them are, again, as I mentioned, most of them are going through some technology modernization process. That common theme in technology, and a lot of them have been vendors for different things. Technology is not a big challenge. It's actually not a big factor. People want to change hard. Change is very hard. And no matter what software or what hardware or what technology you come in place, even if it's the perfect thing that you don't know where is the perfect technology. But even if you imagine perfect solution, still there's still change. There's the process that they're going to change. It's the workflows they're going to change, the way how people interact, and it's both internal and external. So we have the end users of all these products have to get used to something different. We're talking especially when we're talking about that areas like this, marijuana, like clients, just trying to get afford. There's a lot of different systems that our stakeholders have interacted with that. And and also our staff. So marijuana had their own set of dealing with liquor had their own. And we had there's a lot of processes. We have dozens, hundreds of Excel spreadsheets that were part of that agency work at the time. And now we're going to bundle all of that into one integrated licensing and enforcement application. So it's going to be a lot of things for everybody involved. And we wanted to hire a company that specializes in helping both internally and externally going through those things. One of the things that we heard last time here, there were some challenges with privilege tax implementation. And again, not necessarily the software that had any issues. There's a big pain for everybody involved. There's a lot of communication that will be happening again, internally and externally.
So Christy, are you going to be working with any of these three?
Chair Rosenbaum, Commissioners, for the record, my name is Christy Todd. I'm the Project Management Manager and Customer Services Manager. And yes, I will.
All three?
All three of these contracts, yeah.
So,
Two of them we're already working with. This is going to be the third one.
I know, but I mean, you got your hands full.
Well, we do have a lot going on, which is why we're getting the organizational change management contractor on board. So the organizational change management contractor is not just helping with our IT projects, the CSSC, the MLOC, but they're also helping with the move to a new facility. And that's a big change for staff as well.
I know, and there's going to be overlapping.
Right.
And who do you have? I mean, this is almost mind-boggling in a way. It really is.
It is, again,
I mean, you're sitting here talking very calmly about it. But Jesus God Almighty, you've got Boba. I know and Christy, I know both of you are very capable. There's no question about it. Boba and I have a history together. This is mind-boggling.
It's very exciting times here on and they're going to get more excited as we go month by month and year by year. But one of the reasons that, again, I wanted to bring a focus on this contract with the organizational change management. Again, we have to go work with Steve and work with our CFO and figure out, because there's again any new contract we bring aboard. I mean, more money that we have to come up, but to work very diligently in carving out the resources. And again, we're talking to the developer.
Forgive me on this. You report directly to Steve on this?
I think our entire executive team is very closely engaged with that, but yes.
Christine, we're getting to go.
Yeah, so you are actually copied on all of those emails when we have the joint project steering committee meeting / governance committee, where we meet once a month to specifically talk about the project and bring some of these contractors in the meetings with us when applicable. But then also, of course, outside of those steering committee meetings, anytime we have a special meeting or convene with a smaller group, we do that as well. And so there's a lot of meetings and a lot of organization.
Who was the contract at the meeting that I was at? And that was for the
Computronic. Yeah, Computronic. So that's our solutions vendor.
And which one of those here?
They're
These
not
are the
here.
professional services contract.
So that's the previous slide, the first slide.
Right.
So the first slide when I was talking about a fit gap analysis, that's the contractor that was so Computronics. I want to look at the liquor license and compliance. So a lot of work ahead of us, and again, it's going to be a lot of change for everybody involved. And just, I think just the awareness of that's coming, I think it's very, very important.
Well, that's why I asked you to make this.
Next one. I guess, Christy, we'll pass it on to you at this point.
Sure.
You want to talk about the budget and about I think the next couple of slides will be, just to give you guys an idea, it will be about budget and about our timeline, which we kind of mentioned last time. And I think we have pretty much tax updates. So,
Sure. So we did get our bond fund. So we have $27 million in bond requests to cover the bondable costs for the IT project. So there are a lot of things you'll see. We have bonding and non-bondable expenses. So there are quite a few things in a capital IT project that you cannot bond. So that's why we have them separated out into two separate groups. But as of today, on May 17th, we do have $8.5 million of that $27 million in bonded funds that have been released to us. And we sort of have estimated out what we think those bondable costs are going to be. Of course, you'll see in the next slide for the Distilled supply chain project, those are just estimates for right now because we haven't released that RFP yet, as Silva mentioned. For the non-bondable expenses, Bill is here. So Bill, Shooty, and Colin Nealon have put together a request, a policy option package request for a 23-25 session that includes those non-bondable expenses as we have been able to project them for now. So for the marijuana liquor licensing compliance project, because we have a contract with the solution vendor Macroeconomic, we have a much clearer picture of what those non-bondable expenses are. For the distilled spirit supply chain project, we are estimating what those are, kind of based on what we've seen from MLOC, and then also from the request for information that we've released back into the
Colin, our CFO, definitely always likes to make sure that we mention if we talk about budget, especially if we're talking about DSS, the projected value of best guess could be plus minus 50% at this point. That's kind of
I talk away.
Yeah, same thing. If you would switch to the next slide for me. So we have a note at the bottom. DSSC project could increase by 50%. We did hear from Chris Nathan earlier today that costs are going up all across the board. And so our estimates for the distilled spirit supply chain project are based on from those RFI responses in 2009. So at this point in time, that's the best information that we have and that we're working forward with. As you look at what we have here, so Tara Rosenbaum, we were mentioning all the different vendors. The distilled spirit supply chain at the top, I have that lumped into one. We're doing one request for proposal, one RFP, but there is potential for 3 separate vendors in that RFP. Warehouse management system, point of sale, and then the ERP. So there's also potential for one vendor to come in and get all of those 3 systems, or two, right? So
that's not realistic.
So I just want to be cognizant that as we look here, that the distilled spirit supply chain line could potentially be broken up into 3 lines once we get the contract. And then we have Macroeconomic, who's our MLC vendor, Research Data, Gartner, and then the OCM vendor that Boba talked about before. On this chart, they are broken up into our bonded and non-bonded expenses, and the total enterprise modernization project, the program budget right now is estimated at $38 million. This includes the bonded and non-bonded.
We'll be at the new warehouse on 23-25.
I believe the next slide is, oh no, next slide's privilege tax.
That's
Okay,
privilege
let's
tax.
put a pin in that when we get to the project.
All right.
The very next slide.
Okay.
So there's some really good news. So Boba mentioned privilege tax earlier. We did have some bumps on the road in privilege tax earlier, but the privilege tax staff has been doing a fantastic job in getting communications out. They've been drafting the communications and sending them out to all of their licensees. And because of that, we've had another phase go live. So 2 more licensee groups, which were direct shippers and wine self-distributors. And as you can see, for direct shippers, we already have almost all of those direct shippers are in the system and reporting taxes. The wine self-distributors is a much smaller group, but percentage-wise, it's still really good. And then the next release of the system functionality is winery, and that functionality is going to be ready soon. However, because of the timing for the wineries, we're in harvest season or coming up on harvest season, and we really want to make sure that we have time to adequate training with this group. So as the wineries and the growers privilege licensees, and we're going to have them start reporting in January 2023. And then staff has already started working on the final phase of implementation, which is more administration related. So it's the audit, reconciliation, and reporting functionality. And then that completes the entire project to be completed in summer of 2023. A lot of hard work from the privilege tax. They really turned this one on.
And especially in that, we get talking about staffing shortages. We have a lot of turnover, hiring constantly. So, and we did not have the organizational page management consultant, which we learned from that, and that's why we are getting a contract now, because that was part of the problem. Again, it was not really the software; it was just the communication and just adapting to the team. So that's what we are trying to do. Our next phase of our project.
Any questions? So I asked for this because I want the commission to understand the task you have in front of them. You know, we come here for a meeting once a month. We work during the month, but we're not there every day. And the job that Steve and the staff that you guys have, this is enormous. I would ask you to come every 2 months back to us, but I want them at the beginning of the meeting, not at the end of the meeting. And I think it's worthwhile because this is what the future of this agency. If they mess this up, the agency is going to be messed up. So I mean, it's that important to everybody as far as I'm concerned. So, but I think whatever you need, and you know, Steve, my suggestion is to take parts of this and get Rosie prepared for the legislature, because they're going to have to, you know, we can't plan soon enough. They're going to have to understand the task in front of us. They've got $1 billion in revenue, and eventually you're all going to depend upon what the hell happens over the next 2 years with this in terms of the functionality of it. So let's do it every 2 months and give us a report at the beginning of the meeting.
I just know it's the roll down, right?
Yeah.
State government, people not able to get enough people.
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
do the rest of the work.
We.
So my point for this is that clock is off a couple months already, and we're just starting, right? And we got to make that match up with the warehouse dump. So it gives us a feel for the pace here. And last year, when Chris, or even before last legislative session, you know, we've got the revenue sheet that shows, you know, year one after 2025 with the warehouse open. Well, you don't realize that, right? We're gonna have some challenges, right?
We got the whole picture, believe me. I mean, everybody here got the picture. You did a good job on it.
You need to prepare back up.
So Sarah, on your earlier question, so the schedule's up here. So the distilled supply chain timeline is a rough guess, but again, based on the responses that we got from those RFIs in 2019, it is a very aggressive timeline, and point every month we postpone releasing that RFP, postpones our ability to go live with the system. Now, this is an estimate, so actual dates may change, because all I can tell you about this timeline for the supply chain is that it's wrong. But that being said, it's our best guess based on the information we have right now. And so we are planning on going having the facility built in early 2025. And if you look at our predicted go live for this right now, I think it's June 2025.
Yeah.
And so that it's aggressive, implementing 3 different systems. If you look at the marijuana and liquor licensing compliance system, the green line at the top of it, that is one system. And we started earlier on that one. So that dark blue is really our implementation window for 3 different systems.
One thing that I just kind of want to mention, one thing that is for sure, we're going to have to, whenever the building is actually, the new warehouse is ready and movable in, there's going to be a period also that we're going to have to run things in parallel. There's no, I think we're all, we were preparing Steve and Chris knows very well where we're going to have to run things in parallel, and we're going to have to run the new setup for a while until we make sure that it's all running the way we're expecting it to, because there's a lot of stake that if we turn the switch on and shut down something else.
The hiring that you do now is going to be critical as heck for where you're going to be when that new warehouse opens. I mean, I know Steve understands that. I know you understand that, but it's got to do it, and you got to find it. Team, we're at your we always say that. Sometimes you don't take advantage of us, but we're at your disposal on this stuff in terms of the legislation.
Gonna need it for the understanding.
Yeah.
It was our role. Right now we'd go paper, 2 or 3 more lawyers and 2 or 3 more procurement. How much money is it take on the back end? Makes perfect sense. Not what's gonna happen.
But you have people here on this commission that can deal with the legislature and tell them how important this is, because quite frankly, we don't have a choice on that.
Well, I think there's another component to this that this can address or hasn't addressed, is that, as you can see, this process of change started occurring 5, 6, 8 years ago, when people were still doing everything by paper. So here it is, we're making change. It's going to be very important for us as commissioners to support the exec team and what's happening and the management team that's trying, simply because it's happening, people are not going to be happy. We're telling people change is coming, change is coming, change is coming. But the minute change comes, people are going to say, well, hell, that's the stupidest thing I've ever seen in my life. And that's going to be an undercurrent that we're going to have to deal with as an organization. And it's going to be incumbent upon us to say, hey, we wanted you to do this. We told you to do this. We got the money to do this. We need to be prepared for pushback from certain staff people, or a lot of staff people.
And our agent and a lot of other people.
Exactly.
There's going to be changes in the stores when this happens.
So we need to be ready for that, understand it's going to happen, because it's going to happen. It's the same thing that I've talked about when we changed how we issue licenses, try to make it more equitable. Well, people won't like that. They're going to push back. So this is another pushback we have to be ready for. I love having Matt smiling over there.
The interesting thing is that sometimes they push back and there are choices. In this case, there's no choice.
Well, and we saw the people saying, this is great, this is great. I'm glad you put that up there. Because everybody thinks that this is terrible because, you have the naysayers. But not everybody's a naysayer. But we have to remember that too. So, thank you.
Well, this is what they call sobering. And thank you both for a wonderful job, seriously.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you.
Boy, these are interesting
Right,
times, aren't they?
right.
Take it back to Marvin back in 8 years ago, where I
Well, look at-
needed the.
Yeah, look at when Marvin
today.
came on.
We got some of the right people. We said we needed the right people. We built up, I wish we had more. I would have opened those. We need more, but, great job for comparatively, in that time. Long way. Capability.
Christie is doing a fantastic job. She really is. And you deserve all the credit. Boba, I go back with him, 15, 20 years? And I couldn't think of a better person to be in this job right now. We're very lucky. Any other? Meeting adjourned.